Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 158 of the Healthy Skin Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about rosacea, and specifically a rosacea warrior's story, her personal story, living and thriving with something called granulomatosis rosacea. It's a really specific form of rosacea that, well, we're going to share some before and after photos in the blog post that's associated with this particular episode, because I think it's helpful for you to just see that, especially if you haven't had rosacea before, if you know someone who has, like, rosacea can go from being just like mildly flushing in the face, in like the forehead, nose, and cheek, and kind of like chin region, to being, in a sense, really embarrassing and truly transforming in a way that no one could ever imagine possible. And so it's important that we bring awareness to this, that especially in a day and age where it's not uncommon for people with rashes to be looked at as diseased or contagious, and people make all sorts of really unpleasant comments. And my guest today, I think, is incredibly brave for sharing her story and sharing why this journey was so life-changing to her, because not only is she just like, she's a human being, but she's also a licensed esthetician. And so skincare, especially on your face, is what she does for a living. And so having this happen to her seemingly out of the blue just really rocked her world. And I'm so grateful to have her here today. And before we dive into that conversation, I just want to also make it clear that there is a really deep emotional and mental component to having skin rashes. So it is okay if you feel a certain way about how you look. I think a lot of people go, oh my gosh, I don't want to be vain. But the reality is that the way we show up does impact our energy and how confident we feel in that particular circumstance. And I think that many of us try to power through or muscle through, or you have people just say, oh, well, who cares? You just be who you are. It doesn't matter how you look. But the reality is that how you feel is how you feel. And it's important to honor those particular feelings rather than push them down and allow them to act as another point of pain in your life. And so I wanted to share a piece of an email that I received recently that exemplifies this. So this was from a reader of my newsletter, and she shared, "You sent an email about the emotional toll of eczema a while ago. I have been wanting to thank you for that. I obviously knew that having eczema was hard, but I don't know if I fully realized the impact that it had on my psyche and confidence until reading through that email you sent, as well as the podcast. Kind of a light bulb moment, and legitimized my experience. It literally brought tears to my eyes in a relief sort of way. Thank you for opening up about your experience in this way and bringing light to the emotional aspects of skin issues. And thank you for all of the work that you do in general. I've been following you for a while and really appreciate your work." The reason I share this is because the emotional impacts that we get, especially when skin issues, skin rashes, skin conditions, are very front and center, right? It impacts your face or your hands, and it's not easy to cover up. Yes, the areas that can be covered up are certainly triggering and can be triggering for people, right? Maybe you don't feel you can wear shorts, or you can wear a bathing suit, or you can wear short sleeves or a tank top. However, when it's front and center and you can't wear clothes to even cover up the rash, that can be even more triggering because it's always with you every moment of the day. You can't escape it. And I just want to hold space for anyone who is listening to this, whether you have rosacea, you have eczema, you have psoriasis, whatever that is impacting your face, that if there are emotions that come up, that it is okay to feel them. And in fact, it's important to feel them. It's important to acknowledge them, not to push them down or push them aside and say it doesn't matter and it's all in your head. Because the reality is we'd all love to act as if this experience of living with a rash, like once it goes away, I'll be better. I'll feel confident. And I can tell you that that is not always the case. The things that happen to us, those traumas, those stressors don't just disappear simply because you finally figure out how to get the rash to go away. So I think this is an important conversation to preface today's interview with, because confidence and the way that we hold ourselves, right? It's not about how other people necessarily see us, because we can't control that. But we can control the way in which we hold our self-image, our self-worth, our self-confidence. In a sense, it's almost like having to approach yourself as you would a child and provide the same kindness, loving, and care that you would to a child that is really suffering. I'm not a therapist, but I do know what it's like to feel so shameful that you don't want to see people, that you don't want to go out in public. I couldn't hide my hands. They were very obvious. Your face is typically the most obvious spot. Hands can be the next most obvious spot because we shake hands, we write. Wearing gloves in the middle of warm weather seems strange and weird to a lot of people, and especially even in the wintertime if you're wearing like some sort of random sort of glove that's not a winter glove and you're inside, and people don't understand that and they make comments and they stare. And so I think for many of us, we have to hold space. I know it's hard because we're holding space for a lot. We're holding space for all of the symptoms and the issues that we experience. However, we also need to hold space for the emotions that come up and know that it's okay for them to be there. And one little caveat to this, I just want to say that it is also okay for you to, and this is a term that I see a lot online, is unhide your skin. It is perfectly okay to do that. In fact, I'm all for that, meaning that you're not necessarily walking around in pants because you have rashes on your legs, that you just show up however you show up, you wear whatever makes you feel comfortable. It's also okay if you're not comfortable showing up, showing your rashes, to cover them up. You do whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. There is no judgment. There never should be any judgment. And it's a huge step out of many people's comfort zones initially to start unhiding their skin. But I just want to make that point that because we're talking about this concept of wanting to hide and that you can't hide your face, it's equally okay to not hide. And in fact, I try to encourage clients to not hide. But again, you can't put yourself in a position where if you're trying to be more self-confident, you then end up putting yourself in a position where unhiding those rashes creates an excessive amount of stress and pressure on yourself that you're just not ready for in that particular moment. So know that it's all okay. There is no straight line. There's no rule book. There's no playbook. There's no manual on how to do any of this and to overcome these issues and traumas that we get from living with skin rashes. But what I do want to underline is that wherever you are, it's okay. And it's okay to feel the positive feelings as well as the negative ones. It's okay. And fortunately, here on the Healthy Skin Show, we have a number of episodes that we'll link to in the show notes that also help talk about these underlying issues that impact our confidence. That way, perhaps it'll give you some ideas, some starting points. And if you feel like you need some additional help, I would encourage you wholeheartedly to reach out to some sort of counselor or therapist or coach that has a lot of experience dealing and supporting people through this. That way you can get the appropriate type of support that you need to help you most. All right, so with all of that said, let's dive into today's discussion with my guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I have a guest with me today that I am very excited and honored to have on the show. And one of the main reasons why is that I have been trying for over a year to get someone to come on the show to share their story of living and ultimately thriving with rosacea. And I came across our guest today's profile on Instagram, and I was really touched by her story and her willingness to share everything that she has gone through, and asked her to be here. And so she's going to share her story with you today. And I think it's important for those of you who are listening to all of these different episodes, especially where we dive into the science or we talk about food, to hear someone who has gone through this personally and what her experience was like. And so I'm just deeply appreciative to have our guest today, Gabrielle Buckman, with us. She is a licensed esthetician in St. Louis, Missouri. She was diagnosed with but you're going to have to probably help me with this, granulomatosis rosacea. Is that correct, Gabrielle?
It's granulomatous.
Granulomatous rosacea a year ago in May. So that was May 2019. And she uses her training in skin and fortunately, with the help of a very wonderful dermatologist, she was able to get her rosacea under control. And so she also helps her own clients in the St. Louis, Missouri area overcome obstacles of their own skin conditions. And many of the reasons which you share is because you can relate to them. So, Gabrielle, I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, since we're talking about rosacea, would you mind sharing with us, how did rosacea pop up in your life? When did this happen and what was going on? What was this introduction into rosacea like for you?
Yeah, so like you had said, it's been a little over a year now. I had just switched birth controls. I just went from the name brand birth control to generic. And all of a sudden, I started breaking out. And I was just like, oh, this is hormonal with the change. So I didn't think much of it, but it started getting worse and worse. And it almost looked like an infection on my nose area. So I did go to the doctor, and they thought that it was a staph infection. I went to two separate doctors, and they both thought that. So I got on antibiotics right away, and nothing was changing. So finally, I found my dermatologist that I'm going to now, and she realized that it was actually granulomatous rosacea. But it's such a rare form that they didn't realize that that's what it was at the time. Um, so it was hard. I had perfect skin beforehand. Being an esthetician, I really take care of my skin and take pride in it. So all of a sudden, it was red and crusty, and there were these pustules all over the place. And I was super self-conscious, wanted to cover my face all the time. I wore a mask when I was at work and a Band-Aid over my nose. It was difficult.
And for you, like, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, did you have any guesses as to what you thought was going on? Like, did you just think it was like a weird acne issue or maybe an infection at first?
I did agree with them that I thought it looked like an infection. It did
Mm.
look very similar to like a staph infection or impetigo.
And what did you try? Because I'm going to guess, being an esthetician, you're like, okay, I can probably try some different things, but like, what did you try that you thought might help, but ultimately didn't?
Yeah, so I originally thought it was acne at first before it started turning into an infection. So I was trying the wrong things for rosacea. I was doing like salicylic acids and all of these harsh things on my face, and it was not working. It was just exacerbating the rosacea.
And so it sounds to me like what you've learned from this experience, and I would guess if any listeners are really they're like, oh my gosh, this sounds like me, is like, you have to know what you're dealing with, right? Because that can make it
Exactly.
worse.
It's very important to get a diagnosis for what you're dealing with instead of
So
just treating it home.
yeah, and when you finally got the right diagnosis, what did the dermatologist tell you at that point?
So she actually put me on a sulfur face wash. And I started taking doxycycline, 100 milligrams a day. But she honestly told me that this type of rosacea, the chance of it going away, the chances were slim to none.
Mm.
That I would probably live with it forever in some way, shape, or form. But I'm here today, and it's completely almost invisible to see.
at the moment when she told you that, like, you might have to live with this for the rest of your life. Like, you might not get rid of this. How did that feel?
It was absolutely crushing. I felt so depressed. I was like looking online for support groups, and it was so rare that I couldn't find anyone who was struggling exactly with what I had. Um, it was just horrible.
And it's on your face, so it's very difficult, right? Even with makeup, it would have been difficult to cover up.
Oh yeah, it was almost impossible to cover up because there were those crusts and everything on there that you could still see, and the
Mhm.
redness alone is hard to cover.
Yeah. Did she give you any sense of why this can happen? Your dermatologist, that is, why this type of rosacea may form in some people?
Really, she said that they don't know very much about granulomatous, but they do think it has a genetic component to it.
And what do you think are maybe some of the reasons why? I don't know if you have any thoughts or suspicions, but do you have any thoughts at this point in time, being on this journey for the last year or so, of why this might have popped up? It's interesting because you did mention you switched the birth control pills, so there was a
Oh yeah.
hormonal shift there. But what are your suspicions?
Yeah, so I think that hormonal, obviously, it's triggered by stress. I do think, and diet. I think my diet has affected it a lot as well.
And so what about your diet? Because I mean, we talk about a lot of food things on the Healthy Skin Show. We talk about gut health and all sorts of things and how it's connected to skin. So in your particular instance, what did you discover? I'm sure you did some trial and error.
Yes. So my big triggers are anything like greasy, pizza. If I have ice cream, even chocolate, things like that, cheese. I found they're pretty common with everyone that those are kind of food triggers.
And did you try any other types of like remedies that you found online that maybe didn't really work?
I didn't actually try anything else.
Well, you're lucky. A lot of people try all these different salves and creams, and I'm sure you see that though as an
Yes. Oh, I've
esthetician,
seen it.
right? People go
Yes.
online, they're like, "Oh, wait, I found this mask, and this woman, like, her skin is beautiful, and I want to look like that, and I now my skin's all messed up."
Yes. A
And
common one that people use is horse paste. I haven't tried that. I do kind of want to try it just to see if it works, but
horse paste?
yes,
What is horse paste?
there's an ingredient in horse paste that is supposed to help with the inflammation and redness.
Oh, wow. I have never heard that before. And is that for those who have rosacea?
Yeah, it's very common. A lot of
Okay.
them use it.
And so, in working with a lot of women with rosacea, what are some key points that you try to impress upon them when they're coming to you now as their esthetician, but also as someone who is like, you're a rosacea warrior? I mean, you've been through this and you are living with this every day, and you have this sort of, it's almost like it's your friend and reminding you, like,
Yes,
hey, um, we're a little out of balance here. Got to get back in balance.
exactly.
But what are some things that you could share with people who are still in the midst of dealing with this and feeling really self-conscious and really maybe even embarrassed about the way they look?
So it's definitely something that there are so many other people that are going through it right now. And if with the right skincare and the right treatment, it can look better, if not completely disappear altogether. But you just have to be consistent with a good skincare regimen, with a good prescription from your dermatologist, and try to remain positive and know that it will get better eventually when you find the right things.
And so you were saying before, like the acne type of approach with these, like, I think they're like the harsher, almost like, I think of them as like kind of stripping ingredients, but you can correct me. You know more about that than I
Yes.
do. Is probably not your friend.
No, that's
So,
not the way to go. When you
okay.
have rosacea, you really want to give it all the love that you can. The main ingredients that I recommend to my clients are the loving, moisturizing, anti-inflammatory, anti-redness ingredients. They're going to be like niacinamide, glycerin, ceramides, hyaluronic acid, and then of course you're going to need a good SPF.
And why is that? Why would someone think to put SPF on their face, I would assume every single day if they have rosacea?
Yeah, so the sun is not your friend when you have rosacea. The heat that just causes extra inflammation in your face. So it's best to do like a mineral based or a physical sunscreen as opposed to like the white chemical sunscreen that most of us use in the summer, because that chemical sunscreen is going to pull in all of the heat from the sun and it's just going to redistribute it throughout your face. So it's going to cause extra redness and inflammation. So if you're using a good physical or mineral sunscreen, it's going to bounce those rays back off. So you're not getting that extra heat in your face, which causes
Mm.
the redness.
And when you say a mineral sunscreen, for someone who doesn't, they might say, I don't know what that means. Like, are there specific types of brands or products, or like, is there a label that we should look for?
Yeah, so you're looking for a sunscreen that has titanium dioxide and or zinc oxide in it. That's what makes it able to bounce those rays back off.
Okay. But when I think of zinc oxide, I'm thinking of like at the beach, super white nose. Like, is that what a sunscreen, like, should you look very whited out from this, or is it something where it has such a low level where you're not going to um, depigment your face to that real intense degree, like we think of at the beach, so to speak?
Yes. No, so it shouldn't be. A lot of times the physical and mineral sunscreens are actually very liquid.
Hmm.
They're kind of runny almost. You can get them that are white, but a lot of the brands they make tinted. So I would always recommend that route just so you're not white ever. Give you a little
Okay.
bit of tint.
And do you ever recommend any sort of like hydrosols or like and actually this, I think this is a great question because this is so, like, your face is, we all like to think that I've had so many clients tell me, and I've even said, I'm not vain. I'm not, I know it sounds like I'm being vain. I'm not vain. But like, let's be honest. We all like to show up feeling our best. And when you don't feel like you look your best because I've had other issues on my face where I've had to have like things burned off because of sebaceous gland hyperplasia. So I get it. I know what that's like. Um,
Yeah.
but like, what would be a good skincare routine for someone who doesn't know, who maybe was just buying for many years Noxzema or Cetaphil, or, they didn't know that they're supposed to even put moisturizer on their face? I mean, frankly, I'm 40 and I didn't know until like 2 years ago that I was supposed to wash my face, use a toner, then do the
Yeah.
moisturizer. Like, I didn't know. So if you're talking to a total newbie who now has rosacea, what would you recommend as an esthetician and as someone who has gone through this? Is what would your skincare routine look like?
So when you have rosacea, you're going to want to keep it simple. So obviously the esthetician in me doesn't love that because I love the 10-step skincare routine where you use everything. But with rosacea, you have to keep it simple. You just need a few products. It's going to make it to where you don't have as much of a chance for that irritation if you're keeping it simple. So you're going to want to look for like a creamy or a milk cleanser. After that, you're not going to want to use a toner or anything. You would just want to go straight into a serum, where that's where I say do like a hyaluronic acid serum, or they make specific like rosacea relief serums. That's where you do that. And then you would just do a really moisturizing moisturizer with like ceramides in it, the niacinamide. That's a good place to have your niacinamide at. And then physical or mineral SPF. And that would be
Okay.
it. That's all you should be using.
Okay. And then another quick question for someone who, they've got rosacea, but they're also at that point where they're dealing with the, you know, I want to throw a little bit of anti-aging in there. And so they try and do like anti-aging products on their rosacea skin. Could there potentially be a conflict there where anti-aging products could exacerbate the rosacea?
Yes, it's really common, obviously, with the retinols, 'cause that's the number one go-to for anti-aging, as well as the vitamin C. It can cause a lot of irritation and redness for you. So a way to combat that with the vitamin C is just to look for a brand that has a lower L-ascorbic level. So you'd want to do like 15% or lower. Um, there's one that I really like is clinical mixed with vitamin C. That's specifically for people with rosacea. It's got that lower level of the antioxidants in it, or percentage, like a 0.5% products. You'd want to make sure that like all of your diet and that your stuff from your good skincare and your prescriptions.
Okay. And that's really helpful to know because I think sometimes like we straddle two different worlds and you're like, well, I got to pick one. Do I have to pick one? And oh, okay, if I have to pick one, where should I go? And so it's good to know that probably opting out of the anti-aging skincare may be really helpful and might help people who are dealing with this every day realize that the skincare that they're using is actually it's really not helpful, right? Because that's what I discovered with my own issue, which is totally aside from this. And some of you guys heard myself and Rachel Pontillo talk about that on the Healthy Skin Show. I was using cleansers and oil-based toners, or no, oil-based serums and oil-based moisturizers that actually made my skin way worse. And I didn't know that I was like doing it to myself, and it was very expensive. It's a very expensive, very painful. And so it's important that we understand these different things. So I was just thinking to myself and listening to you because you're so knowledgeable about all this. And that's what happens when you don't always realize how much education you end up getting until you're in it, right? Where you're just like you're faced with this problem and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out. And you already know a lot, but you start to learn a lot more as a result. So you ended up with this issue and you started working on it. And I want to just be clear before I ask you this question. I am not implying for everybody listening that your experience is going to be the same as Gabby's. But I'm going to ask her the question of, so you started dealing with this, right? You go to the dermatologist, you start swapping things out. You start removing these dietary flares from your diet. How long more or less did it take you to get from looking your worst all the way to looking, I mean, right now, I frankly wouldn't really know that you had rosacea from looking at you. How long did it take to get to a healthier state of skin for you?
So it was a lot of trial and error. It was not an easy journey by any means. So it took me at least 6 months to see any kind of difference whatsoever. And at least 9 to 10 months before I was really confident in my skin again.
Thank you. Thank you for being very honest about that. Because I don't know about you, but when I had eczema, I didn't like I took this out of my diet and I'm eczema free. And I'm like, what?
Yes, exactly.
Telling everybody that like, it's a quick fix. Bam, you're better tomorrow. And you're like, that's not my experience. So the fact that you really, this was a journey for you, even though you found the right things to do, there was some trial and error, but it took time for your skin to rebalance. And so was this a lesson in a sense of patience?
Yes, absolutely. I wanted it right now. I wanted my skin to look better, especially with having to go to work. And I wanted my clients to think I knew what I was doing. And yeah, it really took a lot of patience to love my skin again and get it to a healthy place.
Do you, if now, let's just say like tomorrow you wake up and you start to see things going in the wrong direction, what are some signs or clues for you that a flare could be headed your way?
When I slip up and don't follow all of my stuff to a T, if I forget a step in my skincare, or if I eat something that's a trigger for me, if I was out in the sun, if I participated in any of my triggers or eaten something that's my trigger, I know that it's coming.
So it has helped you in a sense, it sounds like, stay on a path because there is a certain motivation there to want to keep your skin healthy, which I can completely understand.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, been there, done that. We understand. Everybody listening understands what this is like. And I just want to thank you so much, Gabrielle, for sharing your story. Because I know, number one, for everybody who's listening, this is Gabrielle's first time ever on a podcast. You'd never know. She did a great job. And I really appreciate you being here and being bold enough to share your experience. I want to make sure that people can connect with you. You're over on Instagram and TikTok. It's _Gabrielle Buckman _, but I'm going to put links to those in the show notes. That way it's easy for people to get in touch with you. Is that okay if people reach out to you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I encourage it.
Awesome. That is great. And of course, you are in the St. Louis, Missouri area. If people are interested in coming to get some support from you as a licensed esthetician, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm located at Salon de Christe, and the address is 3901 Mid Rivers Mall Drive.
Awesome. That's great. And of course, obviously, guys, you can always just stay in touch with Gabrielle on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. That I found her on Instagram, and it was really helpful to see her pictures and also to read her experiences. And I hope that for those of you out there who are struggling with rosacea, it's helpful for you to know that you're not alone, that this is a long journey. It can certainly be, there can be ups and downs, there can be trial and error, and you know, there's a value sometimes in the reminder that our skin can be like a friend and say, hey, this is, you're not doing what's best for you as a whole. And we're going to remind you of that. I know I don't always love when my skin does that, but it is a good reminder to say, all right, take a step back. Anything else, Gabrielle, you'd love to share with everybody before we close out?
No, I can't think of anything to add.
All right. Well, I just appreciate you for being here. Everybody can stay in touch with you. And I'm so grateful to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
As always, I am deeply appreciative to Gabrielle sharing her personal journey with us. All of the resources that I've mentioned here, and if you want to leave any questions or comments, you can head on over to skinterrupt.com/158. And if you know someone who is struggling with rosacea, I invite you to share this episode with them because you and I both know how important it is to connect with other people who are on the same journey as you, because it makes us ultimately feel less alone. And before you head out for your day, take a moment, head over to your podcast platform of choice and rate and review The Healthy Skin Show. It would mean a ton to me because it allows for people who are looking around for a brand new show to listen to understand why they should tune in. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.